"What's she doing in this meeting?" The man smirked. The woman next to him didn't even look up. Camille Brooks stood there, in her gray Payless pumps, holding her client file. 12 executives. No one offered her a chair. They laughed. They cut her off. And when she walked out of that room, they thought they'd won. But they didn't know. Camille didn't walk in to be accepted. She walked in to listen, to document, to wait for the right moment. One call later, one clause buried in a contract, and the company started collapsing. Not in flames, not in scandal, in systems, in silence. Where are you listening from today? Drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you're ready for the story to begin. All right, let's get into it. "Ma'am, you're not allowed in this room without clearance. Coffee goes to the sideboard." The young receptionist barely looked up from her screen. Her tone was brisk, dismissive, practiced. Camille Brooks stood just inside the glass double doors of the executive boardroom. She had walked in quietly, without fanfare, carrying a leather folio and wearing a navy blue pantsuit that had seen more deals than most of these men had ever dreamed. The receptionist waved toward a silver tray table in the back. "There, just leave it there. They don't like to be interrupted once the meeting starts." Camille didn't move. "Excuse me?" she said softly. Now the receptionist finally glanced up and hesitated, but only for half a second. Then the assumption returned. "I said, coffee goes there. We already told catering not to come in during the meeting." Camille blinked once, slowly. "I'm not with catering." The girl frowned, then smirked slightly. The kind of smirk you get when you think someone's embarrassed themselves, but you're too polite to laugh outright. "Oh, okay, then wait here, I guess. The partners are inside. This is a closed session." She turned back to her keyboard without another word. Across the room, 3 junior associates from the opposing firm were chatting quietly near the espresso bar. One of them nudged the other. "She lost?" he murmured. The second man chuckled. "Probably here to drop something off. These execs always bring their assistants. Just hope she doesn't spill anything on the carpet." Camille said nothing. She walked further into the room, past the long walnut table, past the 12 men in tailored suits who were already seated, and placed her leather folio directly in front of the head chair. That chair was empty until she sat in it. Every head turned. The room shifted. The receptionist's voice, sharp now. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the table. You can't just—" One of the executives spoke up, confused but firm. "Who authorized this?" Camille looked up calmly. "I did." Silence. A beat. Then someone laughed. It was a dry, cynical chuckle from the far end of the table. "Look, I don't know who you're shadowing today, but this meeting's already started. We're waiting for Camille Brooks." Not her assistant. Camille leaned back slightly in the leather chair, folded her hands, and looked around. "I'm Camille Brooks." More silence. But this one was different. This silence had weight. 2 of the junior associates froze. One of them looked like he was trying to remember something from a company briefing. The other was already reaching for his phone, scrolling rapidly. Across the table, Martin Clark, senior partner at Sable & Clark LLP, blinked twice. "You're Camille Brooks?" "I've been Camille Brooks for 67 years, she said. "I was under the impression we had a 10 o'clock a.m. meeting to discuss your firm's proposal to license data integration from our platform." Martin's face shifted, not entirely to apology, not yet, but to the early stages of panic. Of course. We just weren't expecting—" He trailed off. Camille didn't smile. "You weren't expecting what?" Martin glanced to the receptionist, who was now standing in stunned silence near the door. No help there. "You weren't expecting someone like me to walk into this room?" Camille continued. Her voice was calm, the kind of calm that usually preceded a corporate audit or a legal deposition. "I assure you, Mr. Clark, I read every page of your proposal. I just needed to see how your team handles high-pressure environments." One of the junior associates stood. "Ma'am? Ms. Brooks, we're incredibly sorry." There's clearly been a miscommunication." Camille looked at him. Just one look. The man sat down. Outside the glass wall, someone in the lobby had started recording on their phone. You could tell by the way they held it up just high enough to catch the whole scene, pretending to text. Comments had already started rolling in on their TikTok stream. Wait, she's the CEO? They thought she was catering. She? Somebody getting fired today. The receptionist slowly stepped out of view. Camille opened her folio and removed a thin stack of documents. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Let's begin the meeting. We have 30 minutes to determine whether your firm still deserves this contract." One of the suits at the far end muttered, "This can't be happening." But it was, and she hadn't even made the call yet. The glass doors hadn't even fully shut before the first whisper started. "That's her?" someone muttered near the coffee bar. A woman from HR leaned in closer to the security guard. "She just walked in and sat down like she owned the place." The guard didn't look up from the security feed. "That's because she does." The HR woman blinked. "Wait, what?" He finally turned to her. "You didn't hear? That's Camille Brooks, founder, CEO, the woman who turned Quantum 8 from a garage startup into a $3,600,000,000 0 cents operation." A pause. A longer silence this time. "I thought she retired." "Nope, just works from Chicago now. Only comes in for critical meetings." "Well," the woman said under her breath, "someone in that boardroom's about to have a bad day." Inside the meeting room, the air had shifted from confusion to pure discomfort. One of the junior associates, Darren, still sweating from earlier, tapped something nervously on his phone. Camille noticed. "Texting someone, Mr. Harper?" He froze, then tried to recover. "Just letting the office know the meeting started late. They're tracking it for minutes." Camille nodded. Then she pulled out her own phone. Tapped once. A notification blinked across the boardroom's main screen. Everyone stared. It was a simple message, displayed across the monitor. "Meeting recording initiated. Cloud archive active. Timestamp 10:14 AM. No one had seen her connect anything. No laptop, no HDMI cable, just one tap. "Going forward," Camille said evenly, "we'll keep the conversation on record for full transparency." Martin Clark's throat clicked audibly as he swallowed. Back in the lobby, two assistants were watching from the corridor window. They couldn't hear the conversation, but the body language was loud enough. "You see how she just sat down?" one whispered. "She didn't even ask permission," the other replied. "She didn't need to." They were whispering, but the front desk had already gone silent. The receptionist, still pale from earlier, was sitting rigid, eyes forward, like a soldier at inspection. A VP from operations passed by and gave her a quick glance. What happened? She thought Camille was the coffee lady. A sharp exhale. A shake of the head. Damn! Meanwhile, Camille was studying the proposal on the table. She flipped through pages with quiet precision, like she was turning through someone's financial obituary. "I see 4 inconsistencies in your Q4 projections," she said. "Your margin assumptions conflict with the audited data from last cycle." One of the suits started to respond, something about inflation and pipeline updates, but Camille held up a finger. "Also," she said, "your diversity metrics are 5 years behind industry baseline. Not one person of color in your senior leadership team. Your own website shows it." Darren shifted again. Camille's eyes didn't leave the paper. "I looked. Before this meeting. I always do." Martin tried to salvage. "We're working on that. In fact, we just launched an internal DEI initiative." Camille set the papers down gently. "Stop." The word wasn't loud, but it was heavy. "Don't tell me what you plan to do. I'm here because of what you already did." At the far end of the building, in the marketing department, someone had just forwarded a TikTok link. It was the early stream, the one caught in the first 3 minutes just before Camille sat down. The video showed her walking calmly into the boardroom while the receptionist pointed her away. The caption read, "When they tell the CEO to drop off the coffee tray, awkward, Camille Brooks." Within minutes, the comments were rolling in. She held it down like a boss. I would have cussed them out. She didn't even blink. She's giving Olivia Pope ex Michelle Obama. Someone's firm is about to get dropped. Back in the room, Camille's phone buzzed. She didn't check it, she already knew what it was. Outside the door, the head of legal, Cynthia Raines, had arrived. She hadn't been invited to this meeting, but someone had sent her a message. She stood silently just beyond the glass, watching the room, arms crossed. After a moment, she tapped out a message to someone in operations. "Does anyone know who's actually in charge of this contract termination process?" The reply came back quickly. "Camille." It always was. In the elevator lobby, two interns passed each other. "Who's that woman with the folio?" "Dude, that's Camille Brooks." "The Camille Brooks?" "Yup." The elevator dinged. "Damn," one of them muttered. "People really out here thinking she works for catering?" Inside the boardroom, Camille looked up. "I'm giving your firm 5 minutes to explain why you assumed I didn't belong in this room. Not your proposal, not your pitch, not your future intentions." She pointed directly to the man at the far left, the one who had chuckled earlier. "You." The room went dead still. He opened his mouth, and then Camille's phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up. She read the message quietly. Then she smiled, just slightly, and said nothing. Camille's phone buzzed a third time. This time she picked it up with a slow grace. No rush, no apology, just a deliberate gesture, like she'd been waiting for this very moment. She read the screen, then tapped once. "Camille Brooks," she said into the receiver, her tone even. "Yes, I'm in position." A pause. Her eyes flicked up toward Martin Clark, who was now nervously adjusting his cufflinks. "No," she continued, "not yet. Give me 12 minutes. Another pause. "Exactly. Yes. You can begin the process now. Pull the Tier 3 trigger first." Silence in the room. Camille ended the call. She didn't explain it. She didn't need to. But Martin's voice cracked under the pressure. "I'm sorry. What process? What did you just approve?" Camille calmly set her phone down on the table, then flipped to a new section in the proposal packet. "Do you know what Tier 3 means in enterprise compliance language, Mr. Clark?" He didn't answer. She looked directly at him. "It means your firm just triggered a breach of protocol review from one of its largest data partners." The silence had teeth now. On the 14th floor, in the Legal and Risk Division of Quantum8, a flurry of emails had begun cascading through firewalled servers. Subject: URG, Contract Lockdown Directive 7B, from Executive Office to Contracts Compliance Legal, Vendor Relations, Body, effective immediately. Freeze all active engagements with Sable & Clark LLP. Restrict access to shared cloud platforms. Notify third-party vendors of temporary hold status. Begin internal audit under Camille Tier Authority. Back in the boardroom, Camille slid a page toward the nearest associate. It was a table of confidential vendor rankings. At the top, Sable & Clark LLP, status under review. "Tell me, Mr. Clark," she said, "do you know how many Fortune 500 companies you serve today?" Martin cleared his throat. "Approximately 23. "And do you know how many of them rely on our cybersecurity backbone for data compliance?" Another silence. Camille answered it for him. 18. 18 of your 23 clients host infrastructure with Quantum8's cloud layer. She leaned back. "And as of 10 minutes from now, all 18 of them will receive automated compliance notifications, flagging your account for internal investigation." Across the room, Darren was visibly sweating. One of the other associates had stopped taking notes entirely. Martin leaned forward, his voice low. "Camille, Mrs. Brooks, we can resolve this. Whatever the misunderstanding earlier was." Camille held up a hand. "This isn't about me being disrespected." She let the silence hang. "It's about whether your firm can be trusted with enterprise data while demonstrating bias in boardroom-level negotiation. Someone outside the room tried the handle. It was locked. Downstairs in the main lobby, Cynthia Raines, Quantum8's general counsel, was on her phone. "Yes, we've pulled the plug on the pilot contract. No further engagement. Camille just greenlit Tier 3. The person on the other end said something that made Cynthia pause. Then, "Yes, you can go ahead and notify Goldman and Celtrix. Let them know the red flag's active." She hung up and looked at the receptionist, still frozen behind her desk. "You still sitting here?" The girl stood quickly. "Sorry, take a walk." The receptionist disappeared into the corridor like smoke. Upstairs, Camille stood. "I think we're done here," she said. Martin rose as well, frantic now. "Please, Ms. Brooks, Camille, this could damage our entire—" "It already has," she interrupted. She turned to walk out, but then paused at the doorway. "Also, Mr. Clark, your junior associate, Darren, was it? He forwarded the wrong version of the legal brief, the one that still had internal redline comments calling my team old guard stubborn." Darren went completely still. Camille gave him one long glance. "Always check your metadata." As she stepped into the hallway, Cynthia joined her. "Tier 3 actions are in motion. Internal servers show the Sable contract files are already blocked. Do you want us to push it further?" Camille didn't stop walking. "Not yet. Let them feel the silence for a bit." She pressed the elevator button. "I want the panic to come before the mercy." The doors opened. Camille stepped in, turned, and added, just loud enough for Cynthia to hear, "By the time they realize what they've done, the damage will already be irreversible." The doors closed. The boardroom door clicked shut behind her, but the tremor she left behind was only beginning to ripple. Inside the room, Martin Clark remained standing, staring at the table like it might answer for him. Darren had gone pale. His phone was face down, vibrating silently. The room was dead quiet until the wall monitor lit up again. "System alert. External notification triggered. Your firm has been flagged for vendor reassessment by Quantum8. This notification has been forwarded to all shared client platforms." "What the hell is going on?" one of the associates whispered. Martin didn't answer. A junior partner, Susan Liu, scrolled her tablet in panic. "We just got locked out of 4 client workspaces. Live portals, Legal Discovery, Meriwether Global, Franklin South." Darren finally spoke, voice cracking. "Those are all backed by Quantum's infrastructure." Martin sank into his chair like it was no longer his. At the same moment, across Manhattan, a sleek office inside Meriwether Global burst into motion. A paralegal read an email twice before forwarding it to the head of risk. Subject, URG. Vendor Integrity Notice. Sable & Clark LLP has been downgraded to limited access status pending internal review. The risk director stared at the screen. "That's our litigation firm," he murmured. "Camille Brooks just shut them down." Meanwhile, Camille rode the elevator in silence. Cynthia stood beside her, saying nothing, just watching her boss with a mixture of awe and calculated curiosity. At the 30th floor, Camille stepped off. "Have the audit team ready in 20 minutes, she said, "and make sure finance sees the freeze notice. We'll prepare asset disengagement." Cynthia hesitated. "Do you want to warn them?" Camille didn't stop walking. "No." Back inside the boardroom, Susan's voice cracked as she read aloud from her inbox. "We regret to inform you that your firm has been temporarily removed from the approved legal vendor list for Meriwether Global due to a breach of integrity flag initiated by Quantum8. Martin grabbed his phone, dialed, no answer. He called again, still nothing. "They're not picking up." Susan looked up from her tablet. "You don't understand. This isn't just a vendor review. This is reputational quarantine. They're isolating us." Someone else stood. "We have to go public, make a statement, something about miscommunication." Martin's face darkened. "You think this is about public?" He pointed at the wall monitor. This woman just sent a silent signal through every high-level compliance system tied to our clients. No press, no noise, just cold execution. His phone buzzed again. He looked down. His hand dropped. Jesus Christ! Darren leaned over. What? Martin turned the screen toward them. A screenshot from LinkedIn. Camille's profile. Camille D. Brooks, founder, CEO, Quantum 8, board member, Amari Technologies, former chair, National Data Integrity Council, 35 years in enterprise security. And a line beneath that, verified U.S. government contractor, Tier 1 Cloud Security Protocol Oversight. Darren sat back like he'd just been struck. She's not just a CEO, he whispered. She's a goddamn infrastructure overlord. Meanwhile, in Camille's office, the audit team had assembled. She stood by the window, arms crossed behind her. I want every contract we have with Sable & Clark reviewed for vulnerabilities, she said. If they've mishandled even one secure thread, we pull full disengagement. Her voice never rose, but no one in the room mistook her quiet tone for softness. A compliance officer raised a hand. Ma'am, are we initiating cascade blackout? Camille nodded. Not yet. Let's give them 1 hour. That's mercy. Downstairs in the lobby, the receptionist was no longer at her desk. Her badge was sitting on the countertop. No one had told her to leave, but she knew. Back on the 23rd floor, Martin was pacing now. We have to call someone. An intermediary. A mediator. I know someone on Quantum's advisory board. Susan interrupted. Her voice was tight. You mean used to be on their board? She showed him her phone. Camille bought them out last year. Martin turned away from the room. He leaned against the window, forehead pressed to the glass. Outside, the New York skyline glimmered, unaware of the collapse quietly unfolding inside this building. Or maybe not unaware. Maybe the city had seen this before. The moment when arrogance meets consequence. The moment when the system begins to crack, not with thunder, but with silence. The intern who had been running coffee earlier was now standing frozen outside the boardroom. He clutched his phone, eyes wide. He'd just searched Camille's name. Camille Denise Brooks, HD in Data Ethics. Former chief architect of U.S. Military Encryption Initiative, founder of the country's only black-owned cloud infrastructure firm to secure government Tier 1 clearance. Why is no one talking about this? He whispered. In the operations war room of Sable & Clark, 3 directors were gathered in front of a screen. A list of alerts was scrolling rapidly. Quantum 8 node access revoked. Client portal locked. Franklin South, integration failure. Amari Connect, notice of breach. Compliance timeline frozen. No one spoke. The head of infrastructure finally muttered, "We're not being reviewed, we're being dismantled." At Merriweather Global's headquarters, their in-house counsel received a call from Camille's assistant. Just 5 words, "You'll want to check Slack." She did, and there it was. A message sent to all partner vendors from Camille herself. If your legal representation doesn't meet the same ethical standard we demand of our data systems, we won't do business with you. The era of "it was just a misunderstanding" is over. Camille D. Brooks. Back in the boardroom, Susan Liu had pulled out her laptop. Her fingers moved fast. "Her name's in 3 cybersecurity textbooks," she said aloud. She co-wrote the compliance protocols we train our junior analysts with. She was on the ethics panel that grilled Facebook in 2029. Darren buried his face in his hands. Martin sat motionless, his mind somewhere between memory and disbelief. "She was wearing Payless shoes," he muttered. Susan looked up slowly. "She was wearing power. You just didn't recognize it." At a PR agency across town, a senior crisis consultant stared at a Google alert. Camille Brooks trending. Over 120,000 mentions in 3 hours. The top TikTok video had already hit 1.8 million views. The comments, "They told a black woman who built the cloud to fetch coffee. You can't make this up. Every black grandma in America needs to hear this story." At Quantum 8's internal message board, an anonymous engineer posted, "You know why I love Camille? Because she could have yelled, she could have burned the room down, but instead, she documented, she waited, and when the time came, she pulled the cord no one else could see." At Sable and Clark, an urgent meeting had been called. No one touched their coffee. No one looked at each other. Martin Clark finally broke the silence. "I underestimated her." Darren snorted bitterly. "You didn't just underestimate her, you insulted her. In front of a dozen staff. On record." Someone spoke from the corner. "We still have time to apologize, don't we?" Susan shook her head slowly. "She's not looking for an apology. She's triggering an ecosystem purge, and we're the bacteria." In Camille's corner office, Cynthia brought in the latest figures. 11 of their clients have paused billing, 6 have sent formal inquiries, 2 are initiating internal reviews of their association with Sable. Camille glanced at the paper. "Let the 12th one be Amari. That'll break their ceiling." Cynthia nodded and left the room. Back in the boardroom, Martin's phone buzzed again. He stared at it. The caller ID said, "Amari Technologies, Legal Affairs." He didn't answer, because he already knew. This wasn't just a lost deal. This was the kind of mistake careers don't come back from. And it had started with one assumption: that the woman holding the folio didn't belong in the chair. It was 12:01 p.m. when the internal server logs at Sable and Clark lit up with the first true red alert. Critical access blocked. Q8. Cloud Vault root directory locked. Reason: vendor integrity violation, escalation level executive tier. The IT team didn't know what hit them. Folders disappeared mid-transmitter. Case files froze mid-midmitter. Court subpoenas linked to confidential evidence gone. A junior sysadmin whispered, "It's like someone's pulling the cables from inside the system." No one answered, because they were right. Camille sat in her office with her reading glasses perched low on her nose. Her tablet blinked once. A soft chime. "Collapse protocol, sequence 1, complete." She tapped once more. Sequence 2 began. At Franklin South HQ, their CIO received an alert. Legal counsel access privileges have been revoked due to parent vendor disqualification. Do you wish to initiate emergency counsel reassignment? She clicked yes without hesitation. "I don't know what Sable did," she muttered, "but if Camille says they're out, they're out." Meanwhile, the leadership at Sable had finally locked themselves in a glass-walled conference room. Martin was pacing. Susan was white-knuckling a stress ball. Darren had stopped speaking altogether. Do we go to the press?" someone offered. Martin stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Go to the press and tell them we humiliated a black woman CEO in front of 12 witnesses and a camera feed? Then lost access to half our infrastructure?" Dead silence. Then, "We need Camille." Darren spoke, voice dry and final. "She doesn't need us." Upstairs, Camille stood from her desk. "Have we reached phase 3? She asked Cynthia, who had just returned. "We're 12 minutes away, but Merriweather's GC already initiated withdrawal. That makes 14 client firms distancing from Sable." Camille nodded once. "Prepare the clause." In a dim-lit side office at Sable and Clark, a middle manager stared at his screen. A new document had just been flagged as received by Quantum 8. He opened it. It was an excerpt from a contract. Section 14.2, Collapse Clause. In the event of a confirmed ethical breach, Quantum 8 reserves the right to trigger full severance of data access, third-party communications, and escrow relationships without prior notice. It was signed by Camille Brooks, dated 18 months ago. Back at Quantum, Camille walked down the hallway, slow, calm, deliberate. Her heels tapped rhythmically, each step echoing like a countdown clock. A junior executive saw her and stepped aside instinctively. "Ma'am, everyone's ready for phase 3. Camille nodded. Execute it. In the boardroom at Sable, the main screen blinked again. Client withdrawal alert. Celtrix Technologies, your legal services have been suspended. All case files reassigned. Do not attempt re-entry. The last person in the room who had still believed they could recover finally sat down. Susan closed her laptop. It's done, she said flatly. It's already over. Martin looked like he might be sick. Camille returned to her office just as her assistant brought in a final folder. She glanced at the contents. All client responses, cascade triggers, and internal notices. The last page? A printed screenshot from a group chat inside Sable. The message: she doesn't yell, she doesn't gloat, she just ends you. Camille exhaled, then smiled. She stood, looked out the window, and said, just loud enough for herself, "And starting today, I give the orders." Martin Clark hadn't spoken for 20 minutes. He sat in the same position, elbows on knees, hands clasped tight, eyes unfocused. Outside the glass-walled conference room, people moved quickly, pretending not to look in. Everyone in the building had heard something. No one knew the full story, but they all knew the name now. Camille Brooks. At 2:32 p.m., a package arrived at reception. No label, no sender name. Inside, a single black envelope. The receptionist handed it off to Darren like it was radioactive. He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were 2 sheets of paper. The first, on Quantum 8 letterhead, read, Notice of Governance Activation, Clause 9.3. In accordance with the conditional funding agreement signed on August 11, 2031, Quantum 8 retains emergency governance oversight if ethical violations threaten stakeholder equity or brand risk. Activation effective immediately. Lead representative, Camille Denise Brooks. The second page was worse. It was a stock ledger. At the bottom, bolded in ink, Quantum 8 Holdings, 17%. Ownership in Sable & Clark LLP, Camille D. Brooks. Board seat appointed 2031, silent. Martin whispered, almost to himself, "She's one of our owners." Darren looked like he was going to faint. "She's been sitting on our board the entire time?" Camille, meanwhile, was already on a call. Her voice was calm, but direct. "Yes, we'll be invoking Clause 12EB as well. I want my board seat converted to active status within the hour. Notify Governance Council and submit the update to SEC filing." Pause. "And tell PR the statement must include the phrase, systemic failure of leadership judgment. I want the language surgical." Inside Sable, Susan Liu's laptop pinged an internal alert. Board composition update, immediate effect. Camille Brooks has assumed full voting privileges as per Silent Equity Agreement, Section 9.3. She stared at the screen, eyes wide. "She's not just triggering collapse," she said aloud. "She's seizing the wheel." In Camille's office, her assistant Maria entered quietly. "It's confirmed," she said. "Legal has processed the change. You now hold 2 of the 5 voting seats on Sable's board. The firm has no legal way to block the activation." Camille simply nodded. "Draft the first internal directive. What's the subject line?" Camille thought a moment, then smiled. "Just barely. Subject: Interim reorganization begins at once." Back at Sable, the fallout accelerated. A senior partner burst into the room. "She's called an emergency board meeting for our board at 4 p.m. today." Martin looked up, dazed. "Emergency what?" "She activated the clause." "She owns us, Martin. At least the part that's not on fire right now." They all turned toward the main screen in the room, where Camille's name was now listed as Acting Oversight Officer. At 3:48 p.m., the conference room's smart glass dimmed automatically. The lighting shifted cooler. A security camera at the corner pivoted to face the center of the room. Camille entered. No fanfare, no entourage. She carried a single sheet of paper. She walked to the head of the table and remained standing. Martin was already there waiting, shoulders sagging. Camille looked around at each face, one by one, holding eye contact, no judgment in her expression, just clarity. Then she spoke. I invested in this firm 12 years ago because I believed it could be better. No one moved. I sat silently on your board, watched your numbers grow, watched your team survive 2 lawsuits, a data breach, and 1 ethics violation you barely reported. She paused, and I said nothing. Then she placed the sheet of paper down on the table. This is your final quarterly report under the old regime. Starting tomorrow, I name the interim leadership team. Susan whispered. You're replacing us? Camille met her gaze. I'm saving you from yourselves. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door, looked back, and with the calm of a woman who didn't need to raise her voice to own the room, said, I didn't come to be served coffee. I came to clean house. At exactly 4:15 p.m., Camille's first directive hit every inbox at Sable & Clark. Subject, immediate leadership reassignment from Camille D. Brooks to all staff effective immediately. Martin Clark is relieved of managing partner duties. Legal ethics officer assigned. Maria Santos, interim. All compliance documentation to be routed through Quantum 8 ethics panel for review. All ongoing casework to be paused pending reassessment. You will receive further instructions at 8:00 a.m. tomorrow. CB downstairs. The front desk printer spat out 4 termination packets, triggered automatically from governance software. The receptionist, not the one from earlier, she was long gone, handed them to the firm's HR officer. She scanned the names, blinked, then whispered, 4 of the original partners gone, just like that. In Camille's office, Maria Santos stood beside the large screen. It displayed a cascading chart of current client accounts, each one marked with new color-coded status. Safe, under watch, temporarily suspended. 17 clients paused, 8 requested immediate meetings, 3 sent statements of support, Maria reported. And the press? Already catching wind. The TikTok clip hit 5 million. Camille didn't flinch. Let it rise. At 4:37 p.m., news broke on LinkedIn via Quantum's verified account. As part of our ethical oversight obligations, Quantum 8 is leading the interim restructuring of its partnered legal vendor Sable & Clark LLP. We believe accountability begins with immediate structural change. Underneath, the comments flowed fast. Camille Brooks strikes again. This is textbook governance leadership. That's what you get when you underestimate a woman in Payless shoes. No mercy, just protocol. Inside the building, whispers had turned to cautious awe. Someone from HR murmured, I think she has a list. Like a firing list? No, a fixing list. At 5:12 p.m., Camille returned to the 23rd floor conference room, now nearly empty. Only Susan Liu remained, clearing files into a box. She looked up, startled. I didn't expect. Camille raised a hand. You're not on the exit list, Susan swallowed hard. Why not? Because you were the first to admit the truth. The first to say, it's already over. That's not defeatist. That's honest. Camille walked to the center of the room. Laid-off firms usually collapse from pride before incompetence. I don't plan to let that happen here, not while my name's still on the ledger. At 5:33 p.m., Camille sent one final message. This time it wasn't a command, it wasn't a directive, it was a promise. Subject: to the staff of Sable & Clark, the days ahead will be hard. But hard is where we do our best work. You will not be punished for the sins of those above you. You will be empowered to fix what they broke. No more silence, no more bias behind closed doors. You work for a firm under repair and under protection. Let's begin. Camille. In homes across the city, young lawyers read the email from kitchen tables. Paralegals forwarded it to friends. Law students screenshot it with captions. This is what leadership looks like. She didn't burn it down. She rebuilt it on her terms. At 5:59 p.m., Camille finally leaned back in her chair. Her assistant handed her a cup of green tea, still hot. Maria asked, "Do we rest now?" Camille glanced at the glowing skyline. "No," she smiled. "Now we start the real reform." The war room wasn't called a war room. Not officially, but everyone in it knew that was exactly what it had become. At 8:00 a.m. sharp the next morning, Camille stepped into the 19th floor strategy suite of Sable & Clark. The walls were glass. The air was tense. 7 department heads were seated, silent, with tablets in front of them. The screen at the front read, "Emergency Governance Session, Oversight Lead, Camille Denise Brooks." No one said a word as she entered. She didn't smile, didn't greet. She simply opened her folder and began. "Let's begin with facts," Camille said, her voice measured. She tapped the remote once. The first slide appeared. 112 client records flagged for non-compliance. 47 open cases without conflict of interest disclosures, 3 incidents of internal complaint suppression, 2 whistleblower messages that were never escalated. "The data," she said evenly, "does not lie." A cough somewhere in the room, then stillness again. She advanced the slide. Minority client retention, 29% lower than white-led firms. Women-led case teams, 14%. DEI compliance hours reported, 4.8 per attorney annually. Camille folded her hands. This is not just inefficient, it is unethical, and it is over. She turned to the head of litigation, a graying man named Paul Fisher. "You argued last quarter that compliance training would lower productivity. Is that still your stance?" Paul swallowed hard. "No, ma'am." Camille turned next to the head of HR. "You've had 4 reports of racial bias in promotion decisions since January, all closed due to insufficient evidence. Reopen them." The woman nodded. Camille nodded back. "This is not punishment, this is triage." At 8:24 a.m., her assistant Maria entered with a stack of folders. She began distributing them around the room without a word. Each folder was color-coded. Red, suspension reviews. Blue, policy rewrite. Drafts. Green, client impact notices. Gold, DEI alignment reports. Camille waited until every hand held a file before speaking. "These are not for discussion," she said. "These are for action." At 8:31 a.m., the room dimmed. A video call was initiated. 2 faces appeared on the wall. Quantum 8's Chief Compliance Officer and the Chair of Amory Technologies Legal Ethics Committee. Camille addressed them first. "We're implementing a full-scale correction model. Your firms will be monitoring it in real time." The woman from Amari leaned forward. "We've never seen a law firm restructure this fast." Camille answered without pause. "Then take notes. You'll see it again." At 8:48 a.m. Camille issued her first policy decree. All attorneys must complete 20 hours of anti-bias, anti-discrimination training within 30 days. Non-compliance equals license referral. Partner-level reviews will be public to all staff. Bonuses tied to ethical performance, not only billable hours. A ripple ran through the room, not resistance, just awakening. Paul Fisher exhaled, quietly said, "This might actually work." Camille turned to him. "It will." At 9:00 a.m. the meeting ended. Camille remained standing as the others filed out. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say good job. She said only, "Make sure the next meeting is smaller." Maria raised her brow. "Smaller?" Camille nodded. "Only the ones who get it stay in the room." By noon, the first internal message was sent to all Sable staff. From the desk of Camille Brooks, "The storm is not over, but now we're steering the ship. Change isn't cosmetic, it's procedural, it's cultural, it's mandatory. You will make mistakes, you will be held accountable, and you will improve or you will be replaced." Across Manhattan, legal circles were buzzing. At corporate lunches, executives asked, "Did you see what Camille's doing? She cleaned house without even raising her voice. This isn't a reckoning, it's a rebuild." At a law school in Brooklyn, a professor used the email as part of her lecture. This, she said, is what systemic reform looks like when driven from the inside, not the outside. And at 4:03 p.m., Camille sat alone in her temporary office. Her tea had gone cold. She didn't care, because the next message on her screen wasn't for reform. It was from the Transportation Ethics Council. We'd like to speak about a broader industry initiative, modeled after what you've just done. Camille stared at the screen, then closed her eyes for just a moment. The real work was only beginning. It started as a news ticker. Quantum 8 Leadership assumes control of Sable & Clark LLP amid historic ethical restructuring. Then came the follow-up headline. Brooks Protocol being studied by 3 major firms for internal application. Then a podcast clip. Then a LinkedIn post. Then an op-ed in The Atlantic titled The Camille Clause, when a black woman rewrites the rules without raising her voice. By Friday afternoon, the ripple was no longer a ripple, it was a wave. At a downtown firm in Chicago, a young black associate, only in her second year, walked into her manager's office with a printed copy of Camille's reform memo. She placed it on the desk. "I want to know why we haven't done this yet." The manager stared at her and said simply, "We will." At a boardroom in Atlanta, a Latinx-led startup paused its quarterly hiring. "Until we figure out how we're measuring bias, we're just guessing," their founder said. "Pull the numbers. We do it like Camille." A woman named Evelyn, 72, retired educator, sat on her porch in Louisiana watching Camille's full conference video on her tablet. Her niece had sent it. Evelyn clapped once when Camille said, "I didn't come to be served coffee. I came to clean house." Then she whispered, "Tell it, baby. Tell it all." At Harvard Law School, a classroom projected a chart of Camille's restructure plan. The professor asked the class, "What makes Camille Brooks different from a typical reformist?" A student raised her hand. She didn't ask for a seat at the table. She owned the damn table. On TikTok, the audio went viral. "Make sure the next meeting is smaller. Only the ones who get it stay in the room." People lip-synced it, reposted it, quoted it at weddings and job interviews. A video titled, "Camille Brooks, the most dangerous calm in the room," crossed 12 million views. At a global HR summit, Camille's policy deck was cited as case study 3 restorative power without retaliation. And at Merriweather Global, the same firm that once vouched for Sable, their general counsel stood in front of the staff and said, "We are reviewing all legacy partnerships through the Brooks lens. That means who's safe, who's accountable, who's next." Camille never posted about any of it, never gave a victory speech, never tweeted, "I told you so." But on Tuesday morning, she received a note, unsigned, slipped under her office door. It read, "We see you. We see what's possible now. Thank you for not yelling. Thank you for staying." At a women's shelter in Baltimore, a counselor played Camille's quote over the speaker. "Hard is where we do our best work." Dozens of heads nodded. No applause, just quiet recognition. In a boardroom in San Diego, an all-male executive panel went silent as a senior black advisor stood, held up her phone, and pressed play. Camille's voice filled the room. "You will be empowered to fix what they broke." She looked at them all and said, "Are we going to fix it?" By the end of that week, the term Brooks compliance was trending, and not just in law. In retail, in education, in corporate training manuals, a single woman had changed an entire conversation. Not with fury, with structure. And yet, in her office, Camille remained quiet, reviewing documents, signing memos. Someone asked her if she was proud. She didn't answer, but she did smile. 2 months later, Camille Brooks did something she hadn't done in over a decade. She turned off her phone for the entire afternoon. No emails, no calls, no screens. Just her, a garden chair, and a stack of handwritten letters, all sent to her office in brown envelopes from across the country. Some were typed, some scribbled in blue ink, A few were barely legible. All of them carried the same truth. They had seen her, and because of her, they had spoken, stood up, or stayed in the room. One letter came from a young woman in St. Louis, a receptionist let go after reporting a partner's misconduct. "They told me to leave quietly. I almost did. Then I watched your clip. I printed your memo. I showed it to HR at my new job. They made it policy." Another was from a retired judge. "I never imagined I'd see a black woman lead reform like that. Not by yelling, not by suing, but by designing a system no one could ignore." One was unsigned, no return address, just a line that read, "Your silence made more noise than all their speeches." Camille folded that one with care, slipped it into her coat pocket, and stood. Later that evening, she returned to the Quantum 8 offices. The building was quieter now, not from fear, but focus. In the lobby, a young intern passed her. He smiled. She nodded back. They both knew she didn't need to say anything. Her presence was enough. In the main hallway, a new plaque had been mounted to the wall. The Brooks framework. Power is not performance. Power is who writes the system underneath it. Camille Denise Brooks. She hadn't approved the plaque, but she didn't object. Back in her office, the lights were low. Maria walked in with a final update. All restructure phases completed. Staff satisfaction up 36%. 5 more firms reached out for licensing. Camille nodded. Maria hesitated. "Should we announce it?" Camille looked up. "No." She stood, closed her laptop, and said, "They'll feel it. They already do." She stepped into the elevator alone, watched the numbers descend slowly. Ground floor. The doors opened. Outside, the city pulsed. People walking, talking, changing things. Camille put her hands in her pockets, felt the folded note again. Then she walked out, into the night air. Not as a warrior, but as an architect. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of Camille's story. To me, this wasn't just about a black woman CEO getting even. This was about what it means to lead quietly, fiercely, and with vision. Camille didn't scream, she didn't boast. She designed a system so smart it made those who doubted her obsolete. And for every woman, especially every black woman over 60, who's ever been overlooked, passed over, or told to stay in her place, Camille didn't just speak for you. She built the room for you to stand in. If this story moved you, even just a little, please like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. More stories like this are coming, and we're just getting started.